when it comes to addressing the pandemic, the challenges we have about keeping people safe, about making sure that we can continue to have economic activity, and most importantly, that people don't feel the most critical place for them now, as Dr. Henry has said, stay home. We don't want people to think they may lose that home as a result of this pandemic. And I've had just this week 17,000 emails across British Columbia, and that speaks to the anxiety and the stress that people are feeling about these issues. And it was important for us to get the mix right and to ensure that it fit into a more comprehensive plan, working with the federal government and our municipal partners to ensure that we were doing everything we could to keep people safe, doing everything we could to make sure that if they were sick or self-isolating, they'd had their hours cut back or that they were laid off, that they would not be fearful of losing their home. And so I want to also say to landlords, to those who are providing rental housing, that we want to make sure we continue to work with you, because those rent checks are critical to your families as well, critical to you making your payments also. But home should be a place of comfort and security, and we've worked tirelessly, Minister Robinson and Spencer, Chandra Herbert, to make sure that we get that balance right. So this morning, Cabinet met and approved a package, and I'll outline some of those elements today, but it's designed to give immediate protection to renters and to landlords. First, we'll be providing a $500 a month package to help renters up to $500 a month to make sure that they can continue to stay in place and that landlords can continue to see some revenue coming in. That will be delivered through BC Housing. Selena will go into some of the details, but we use BC Housing because it's the best way to deliver this program. They're already working on other programs like Safer, like the renters program that we already have in place. This supplemental renters rebate will be there to help people. This supplemental check will be there to help people get through the coming months. And we want to make sure that, that we do this in a way that makes the most impact for the greatest number of people. I want to reiterate, if you can pay your rent, you should pay your rent. This fund is there to help those people who are in genuine distress. The fewer people who access the program, the more opportunity we have to expand it going forward. The other issue, of course, that's of primary concern to people is the prospect of an eviction during this stressful time. And I'm here to say that while the emergency order is in place here in British Columbia, BC is suspending current and future evictions until this crisis has passed. There will be some exceptions, of course, but by and large, if you are at home, you're a good landlord, you're a good tenant, you will be able to continue that relationship well into the future. That's the commitment we've made as a government. That's what we are announcing here today. $500 a month for the next 4 months, available for rent, a moratorium on evictions, and a rent freeze is the third portion that I want to talk about. This is not the time to seek rent increases, and there is just zero chance of that happening. I think those who provide rental stock understand that, and I want those that are concerned about how they're going to make it to through April, through May, and through June, I want them to be absolutely certain that the government is here to help you. We have programs in place. It's not just the renters piece we're providing today, but we're topping up the federal resources when it comes to those who are going to be going on to income assistance through employment insurance, $1,000 from the province, $2,000 announced today by the federal government. We're waiving the payment of student loans until September. So again, those who are looking at where we're going to find enough money to keep going, we're going to add a whole host of modest programs to make the whole package work for everybody. And lastly, before I turn the microphone over to Minister Robinson for some more detailed assessment of the package that we put forward, because there are a couple of other elements, I want to just say a word about those who are concerned about their mortgages. I've been hearing, regrettably, I've been hearing that some banks and some financial institutions are not as enthusiastic about living up to the challenge that we have in front of us. And so I'm calling on banks and financial institutions to work with mortgage holders to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to get through this difficult time. All of us working together is the only way forward. We've seen extraordinary cooperation in British Columbia over the past number of weeks. We need to redouble those efforts going forward. We need to make sure that we're doing our part by listening to Dr. Henry and ensuring that we are self-isolating if we're not feeling well. We're exercising distances that are appropriate at this difficult time. And also, again, most importantly, continue to keep your hands clean. Continue to work with your neighbors to make sure that they've got everything that they need. Working together, we're going to get through this. No one's going to lose their home. We're going to put some resources into the pockets of people so we can keep the economy going. I think we're on the right track. I know with everyone's support, working together, we'll get through this. And with that, I'm going to invite Minister Robinson to step up and fill in some of the details on the program that we announced today at Cabinet. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Premier, and I too would like to acknowledge that we're on the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people. Well, we all know that the next few months are going to be difficult. That's been clear for some time. And we need to remember to keep doing everything that we can to support each other. Because frankly, that's the only way that we are going to get through this. And it's why we have been working hard to develop supports for people who are suffering job loss and other difficulties as a result of COVID-19. And it's important to remember really what this is about. It's about the people that we love. It's about our families, it's about our neighbors, it's about our friends, it's about our colleagues. It is about our communities. And this is an unprecedented challenge. And it will require every single one of us doing our part. It will require all of us to come together as a society to protect each other. So this past weekend, I talked about some first steps that we are taking to help people who don't have homes right now. And on that front, there is much more to do, and there's more to come. And as we do this work, it is critical to make sure that people in British Columbia are not made homeless because of COVID-19. At a time when we are asking people to stay home to prevent the spread of this virus, we have to make sure that people can keep their homes. The Premier mentioned measures to protect people's health, such as new powers for landlords to restrict. One of the things that we're doing with these new powers is to restrict the use of common areas and to stop visitors coming to the building. So landlords will be able to do that to help keep everyone safe. We've all heard Dr. Henry and Minister Dix outline what it's going to take to slow down this virus so that our healthcare system can keep up. So we have to keep distance from each other to keep the virus from spreading. That means that we shouldn't have visitors over. We have to minimize the number of people touching shared surfaces and running into each other. So this new rule will let landlords restrict access to common areas. For example, restricting how many people can be in a shared laundry room at once, or close down shared spaces like game rooms or other social spaces that might exist in a multi-purpose building. This is to protect the health and safety of everyone in these buildings and beyond. On that same note, we are also restricting the right of landlords to enter people's homes unless there is a clear threat to people or to property. Tenants have to be able to protect themselves and others from the virus. Keeping people out of their homes is part of maintaining the distance that we all need so that we can all be safe from COVID-19. We are also halting the enforcement of existing eviction notices issued by the Residential Tenancy Branch, except in extreme cases where there are safety concerns. And there are a small number of court-ordered evictions that are up to the courts, which operate independently of government. I do understand that the courts are aware of this issue, and I will allow the courts to speak for themselves. We are pairing all of these actions to stop evictions with rental supports that will support landlords, so that they too can stay afloat and meet their needs and the needs of their families. The new rental assistance program will be available to low and moderate income individuals who have experienced a significant reduction in their income because of COVID-19.
Can you
and we're
mute
going
that?
to ask that tenants and landlords that you talk to each other about how to pay rent as you would in a normal course of your exchange and in your relationship, if you can. The supplement that we're proposing with this new program is to help address any shortfall. Because many landlords, especially families with secondary suites, they too depend on rental income to pay their bills.
I was like, who is
And
that
through
guy?
all
It's
of
Mike
this, making changes so that people can continue to access the services
Do you
that
guys
they
wanna
count
listen
on
to the end of this,
at the
or
Residential Tenancy Branch.
move on with our
As a
business?
government, we are here for tenants and we are here for landlords.
I'm sure we'll get all kinds of summaries and stuff on the back end of the announcements by the province. All right. So we got everybody here that's going to be here, it looks like. We do have quorum, yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 13 of us. I think. It's 3, 6, 8. Yep. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the anything but regular board meeting for Wednesday, March 25th. For those of you watching online, you'll notice we're doing our best to practice good social distancing, and hopefully this will be the last of our in-person meetings for some time as we all manage through the COVID-19 health crisis. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize this meeting is taking place on the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people. And with that, we will get underway. So over to Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First item of business is a motion to approve the agenda.
Moved by Director Sebring, seconded by Director Haim. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Adoption of the minutes. Item M1 is the regular board meeting minutes of March 11th, 2020.
Moved by Director Staples, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item M2 is the special emergency board meeting minutes of March 13th.
I have a mover, Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Kuhn. Sorry, Ms. Legault? Oh, I thought you were trying to flag me. Okay. Any discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Back to you, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item M3 is the special emergency board meeting minutes of March 16th, 2020 for adoption.
Moved by Director Sebring, seconded by Director Morrison. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No business arising from the minutes, and I don't believe there's anyone here for public input period.
All right, seeing none, we'll move on.
Report of the chair, if there is one.
I think I said it at the outset. This is anything but usual. I appreciate all of you coming in today and doing our best to employ best practices. Our staff as well for all the work that they've been doing through this all. And I do want to say that especially our custodial staff, they were in here after their morning meetings, disinfecting everything, our chairs, our seating areas, and I just want to remind us all to be mindful of our social distance. We got to model that good behavior and just respect each other, and hopefully this is our pathway to be able to resume business as unusual electronically as we move forward.
Our staff as well for all the work that they've been doing.
Whoever's on WebEx, please.
I do want to say that, especially our custodial staff, they were in here after their morning meetings, disinfecting everything, our chairs, our seating areas. And I just want to remind us all to be mindful of our social distance. We got to model that good behavior and just respect each other. And hopefully this is our pathway to be able to resume business as unusual electronically as we move forward. Our staff as well for all the work that they've been doing on WebEx, please. I do want to.
All right, Mike, that was you. Anyway, so this was going to be my next point. Obviously, there's going to be some bumps along the way with some of this new system. So this is just allowing some of our directors that were unable to and our staff to be here in person to join and listen in on the meeting. After today, we will have committee procedures hopefully in place that allow us to actually meet through this wonderful technology with myself in this chair, by myself, hopefully able to run these meetings. We will have a bit of a delay as the requirements for advertising around the board bylaw will take a bit of time to complete the requirements. They're not being waived by the province, but however, we'll work through that and we'll get back to business. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to committee and commission reports. Item CR1 is the report and recommendations of the Director Services Select Committee of March 11th.
Thank you. Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. CR1 is report and recommendations from our Director Services Select meeting on March 11th, 2020. The recommendations are as follow. 1, that the position descriptions for the roles of chairperson, electoral area director, municipal director, and committee chair be approved as amended. Number 2, 1, the electoral area director's remuneration be increased by $11,167. 2, that reserve funds from function 250 be used to fund the increase in 2020 and the board's reserve fund policy be waived. 3, that the increase take effect April 1st, 2020, and that 4, that the 2020 budget be amended by increasing directors' expenditures by $100,000 and increasing reserves transferred by $100,000. So move those.
Thank you. That's been moved, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. I have speakers list. Director Sebring.
Mr. Chair, can we sever these into 1 and 2? I have no problem with 1, but I think 2 is inappropriate right now.
Yes, we can sever them. We can do them individually if you like. Thank you. And Director Manhas. Microphone, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I was quite dumbfounded when I saw this on the agenda. I thought it was an April Fool's Day joke, actually, to see a director's remuneration of this magnitude at this time. Given the layoffs and the anxiety of people right now to pay their bills and pay their rents, pay their mortgages, and they're all day-to-day expenses. And right now, we're also dealing with trying to get people's property taxes delayed, postponed until September or October. And I just found it absurd that we're actually debating this right now today with the remuneration from the directors.
Thank you. I'm going to speak to that because I think that's maybe an unfair characterization. The process that the CVRD goes through is that when a committee or commission makes a recommendation to the board, it is automatically forwarded to the next board meeting. Now, it may be bad timing from that perspective, but the Director Services Select Committee has been working on this issue for many, many months and had well, actually, I would say over a year and had many meetings. So although the timing is poor, this wasn't brought forward to this meeting. It was an automatic referral to this meeting because the Director Services Select Committee had made this recommendation before this whole crisis erupted. So I appreciate the comments about the timing, but it needs to be clear for the public and for everyone at this table. This was just the way our process and our policies go in terms of recommendations to the board. I have Director Morrison and then
Well,
Director
just a
Ryan.
point of order, are we debating both items, or are we severing and debating 1 first, then 2?
They've been severed, so I think his comments were,
We're for 2, but, okay.
yeah, thank you. Director Ryan. I think you'll have to take the podium, I believe, if you're at the back. Sorry, I know it's awkward. We were unable to find a way to get microphones for everyone in the back.
No problem.
And it was a random draw. Those aren't the cheap seats. Director Ryan.
Listen, I understand that this is something that has probably taken months, if not years, to come to this point. But in light of current events, even granted that, I don't really have a horse in this race because I'm just an alternate director and I wouldn't actually be receiving these funds. I think, first of all, it's a bit tone deaf right now, given the climate, to vote and accept this. And B, I think it's also a little bit probably unusual, and you guys can speak to this. It's kind of unusual, and it seems like a conflict of interest to vote to vote to change your own remuneration. Usually, doesn't it impact the people who are elected in the next electoral cycle?
Yeah.
Just seems a bit odd.
Sorry, just a point of clarification.
Yeah.
It's a requirement of the Local Government Act for municipal boards or regional boards to adopt their own remuneration.
Okay.
Some in practice referred it to the next one. However, I've been part of a municipal council that's taken the responsibility and not tried to defer that responsibility by saying, oh, it's for the next group. But point well taken.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
Any further discussion? I'm seeing none. I believe it's been moved and seconded, so I'll call the first item. That's number 1, that electoral area director's remuneration be increased by $11,167. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Position descriptions for the roles of chairperson, Sorry, I need glasses. I've been staring at screens so much I can hardly see what I'm doing here. Maybe I'll turn it over to Ms. Legault to read the first one out before I call the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
She has glasses.
Recommendation 1 was that the position descriptions for the roles of chairperson, electoral area director, municipal director, and committee chair be approved as amended.
Thank you. Do I call the question? All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Going on to number 2, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Number 2 is a 4-point recommendation. 1, that electoral area director's remuneration be increased by $11,167. 2, that reserve funds from function 250 be used to fund the increase in 2020 and the board's reserve fund policy be waived. 3, that the increase take effect April 1st, 2020. And 4, that the 2020 budget be amended by increasing director's expenditures by $100,000 and increasing reserves transfer by $100,000.
Thank you. Speaking to this, I have Director Nicholson. If you would take the podium.
I actually think the timing's bad on this, and I would like to refer it or defer it for till things stabilize and we're back to some semblance of normal and/or September.
Okay. So if that's a motion to refer, then I would ask for a seconder. That's been seconded by Director Sebring. And speak to the referral. You can speak to the appropriateness of the referral under the legislation. So this is your opportunity to discuss whether the referral is appropriate or not. Director Nicholson made her case that the referral is appropriate because of the timing and the crisis that we're in right now. Director Sebring.
To the referral, I know, and maybe this isn't directly to the referral, but I know that there has been some suggestion that we amend the motion instead to make the increase effective in October. I prefer the deferral. Any decision on this right now, not only is it tone deaf, I just think it's wrong. I mean, in our municipal context, we're actually looking at, we've almost got our budget finalized, and we're reviewing that budget to see if there's ways that we can minimize the impact of tax increases and the magnitude of those tax increases given what's going on. In the middle of that context, for us to vote on a pay increase, even though, like somebody else in this room, I don't have a horse in this race. This is for electoral area directors, not municipal directors, but I just think even taking the vote today is inappropriate. I think we're way better off to put it off until we have some certainty as to what things look like going forward.
Thank you. And again, I did some research on this last night. You can speak to the appropriateness of the referral, and that's fair game. So I'll go to Director Morrison.
Yeah, I'm disappointed that there couldn't be discussion. I think the referral may end up being where we get to, but I think a full and frank discussion would be appropriate now, and don't feel like we can get into that at this point, so.
So procedurally, based on the fact that Director Nicholson put her hand up first to speak to this item and made a motion to refer, it was seconded by Director Sebring. That opportunity wasn't afforded to the board. I would suggest that if the board wishes to have further discussion, that they can defeat the referral motion and we can go back to the motion and continue to discuss the appropriateness of the timing and whether a referral is in order. Sorry, to the referral then. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to do my
Director Acton.
Scared now. I'm going to defeat the referral. I would like to have the discussion. As the chair of this committee, we've been working on this for a year and a half, and there is never a good time, and it's not completely about us. It's about the future of this board. So I would like to, and this is a perfect example as to why we should be approving it, but I'll go to speak to the referral.
Thank you. Any more discussion on the referral? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Directors Morrison, Ryan, Yanni DiNardo, Staples, Kuhn, and Acton opposed. I believe the motion to refer fails. Sorry, I read them out. Director Morrison, Yanni DiNardo, Ryan, Staples, Kuhn, and Acton against.
So that's six directors. We have 12 present. It's tied, so the motion is defeated.
Okay, thank you. By the skin of its teeth. We're back to the original motion that's been moved and seconded. Director Sebring.
We've heard it said there's never a good time to discuss this. I agree with that. I would simply say there is a bad time to discuss it, and we're in the middle of it right now. Let's not do this.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak to the motion on the floor? And I will remind the board that I believe this would be a weighted vote because it is a financial vote. I would encourage those who wish to speak to this. This is your opportunity. Director Morrison.
Thank you. And, you know, I'm going to try and refrain from sort of inflammatory language around this. This has been something that has been discussed for as long as I've been here, and that's 12 years, and I've now seen it, I think, if I turn to Director Yanni DiNardo, twice a board has punted this to the next board and made it very awkward on those people sitting around the table having to make the correction. And once again, it's a timing thing. So, you know, if we look at what has transpired, in my years as chair, one of the very first things that upon discussions with this new board was to tackle that question that wasn't dealt with by the previous board. And last year, the Directors Select Committee was established, which began to do the work that was tasked of them, and that was definitions and the benefits package and compensation. So for the most part, that's just about wrapped up. We come to this question now, and there has been ample discussion. We had a workshop on this item, and I absolutely agree that it's bad timing, and I don't think there's anybody in this room is tone deaf. We're all hearing, we are all seeing, we all understand what's going on in the community. I just have this very strong sense that this very appropriate resolution is not being considered, or if it's not considered today, then we will be in a position where this will be punted to another board, and there will be another increase that will be unacceptable, and we will get into, or a future board will get into difficult circumstances. Director Sebring had alluded to a thought that had come up in this past week or so around the making of the decision, but addressing the timing. And what I meant by that was we have this before us, we have a quorum, we can make a decision that would be an appropriate decision, and we can put off the implementation of this until some of the health crisis and global health crisis is stabilized. I'm not going to make an amending motion at this point, but I could see it being appropriate for us to have the courage to make the decision, not a tone-deaf foray, but to make a decision based on work done by a previous board and by this Directors Select Committee, and vote to make this amendment to the change in the compensation, but to implement it perhaps in October. And the reason why I look to October is October will be the exact midpoint of our term, so that what should have been done last term will be done but halfway through this one. There should be some stabilizing of the crisis that we're all in, and I think that it makes some sense for the second half of this term for this compensation to be implemented. But I think I'd like to hear what everyone else around the table has to say, and I wouldn't want to cut short the hearing what everyone has to say by making an amending motion at this point.
Thank you. I have Director Staples next.
Thank you. So I feel really torn about this because I recognize the challenges that everyone is being faced with today, and that doesn't seem like an appropriate time to follow through with this. But we also have already made the decision. And so I'm sort of leaning now, after listening to Director Morrison speak, more towards, can this be tabled for 30 days? And then if it needs to be tabled again for 30 days, I don't want the board to defeat this motion because a lot of work went into getting it to this point, and I would not want to put that at risk. And at the same time, I have concerns because of all of for the area directors, recognizing everything that you had talked about before about demands on your time and on what you're putting into, and how that has increased substantially given the nature of what's happening. And so I feel really torn about this because I don't want to abandon, all of you either at this time in following up with previous debates that we've had about this and how we arrived here to begin with. So that's where I'm sitting right now, because I recognize the demands that are being put on people right now and the need for this at this time, and then also the recognition that this is not a good time for this. And so I feel like tabling it may be the most appropriate thing to do right now, and at the same time I feel very torn because I don't want you to feel like you're being abandoned at this time when you also need stabilization to a certain extent. And listening to, every day to what's happening and to the government's response and to what's being provided to the government. There's also this other, and again, we're taxed one way or another through this entire thing, whether we're paying taxes to the provincial bodies, the federal bodies that are providing income support to people during this time. What is our responsibility as a regional government towards not putting more burden and pressure on that if people here aren't able to, make a minimum to take care of themselves during a time when their community is calling on them. So it's a really complicated, this is complicated right now. And so in terms of a decision, my preference at this point would be to table it for 30 days. But I feel like that also comes with consequences to area directors. And so I struggle with that right now.
Thank you. Okay, I have Director Kuhn next then.
I do agree that the timing is bad. On the other hand, the timing will never be good. An increase is always going to be looked at by the public, or I would think by the majority of the public. Oh, well, here they're again granting themselves more money or whatever. So we're always going to fight that. I can't see pushing this off indefinitely or month by month or whatever. I think that is almost like we're pushing off responsibility. Well, we'll push it off again. Well, no, we won't deal with it this month. We'll do it next month. We'll have to face this situation. And so my preference would be to change the effective date from April 1st to October 1st. That's a half-year delay. October 1st, I think, is, as Director Morrison indicated, it's exactly halfway for the term, and I think there would be a fair date to choose. And I'm ready to make a motion to that effect.
Okay, so you've moved an amendment then that the effective date be changed from April 1st to October 1st?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a seconder for the amendment? Director Justice is seconding the amendment. Okay, we may have to amend the amendment. Maybe we'll call the amendment after we discuss it and see if there's an extra piece. Director Morrison.
There should be, if we're going to amend the motion, I believe if I turn to our finance staff, that the amount in the resolution wouldn't be accurate any further. So I would ask for assistance in what a quarter would
What, Ms. Weiner?
Yes. Whatever.
Yeah, currently finance hasn't calculated any of the numbers for any of this. It only has for the numbers that are in there. I mean, you could, that was for 9 months, divide by 9, multiply by how many, as well as it would fully impact the next year's 2021 budget. So the full amount will be in for 2021, but I can do some calculations quick like.
So just for clarity, however,
It would cover it.
the full amount would be in there anyway for 2021 regardless.
Yeah, because we would have to put in for 2021 and the amount going forward because it would be done.
Okay, so if it was 100,000 and that was for 3/4 of a year, and we're now talking about 1/3 of a year,
Yeah.
October, November, December, 1/4 of a year, it
Quarter
would
of
be
a year.
essentially 1/3 of what's,
Exactly.
thank you. Director Morrison, I'll go back to you before. So there would be a further amendment required to amend that $100,000 amount to approximately 33,000. Yeah.
So I would move that.
I believe we would want to
Or
call
inappropriate.
this question
Call the
on the
first one, then
amendment.
the second.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So first, before that, though, do we have any speakers to the amendment that's on the floor? Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to support the amendment, but I just wanted to commend those who've spoken and stood firm about the fact that it's not good timing, but you still stand behind it, and I think that's really brave as directors and decision makers, and thank you to Director Staples for what you said, but also I think it's the public who like to criticize will be there regardless, and I think it's really brave of those who said, you know what, I'm willing to take it, and it takes a lot to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any more speakers to the amendment, which is to change the effective date to October 1st from April 1st? I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Directors Ryan, Sebring, and Manhas opposed. The amendment carries. I'll go back to Director Morrison.
Move that the amount from reserve be adjusted to 30,000.
Would that be sufficient? I think 1/3 of 100,000 is like 33,333.
35,000.
Okay, so that's an amendment to the amount has been, on number 4, has been amended to 35,000, or moved to amend to 35,000, seconded by Director Acton. Discussion on that amendment. My gut tells me the vote will go the same way on this amendment. All those in favor of the amendment and opposed? Directors Sebring, Manhas, and Ryan opposed. So we're back to the motion as amended with the effective date changed to October 1st and the amount amended to $35,000 from reserve, and make sure I get this right. Increasing reserves from transfer to 35,000 and expenditures by 35,000. So is there any discussion on the motion as twice amended? Directors Ryan, then Hain.
Okay, thanks again for the chance to talk to this point. Again, now that there's been a bit of discussion about it, I would just like to suggest that we defer it for 30 days, possibly until, I know everybody's saying there's never a good time to vote in a pay increase, but this is an exceptionally bad time right now. And perhaps in 30 days, there'll be a lot more information, a lot more clarity on the state of the economy, the state of the country, the state of the CVRD. But right now, it seems very, very poor timing. Yeah, I'd move for a 30-day deferment.
Sorry, thank you. Seconded by Director Sebring. And do we have discussion on the, so through to the corporate officer, a motion to defer for 30 days, is that in order?
Mr. Chair, that motion has already been defeated.
No, it was, that was a motion to refer.
Okay.
So
There
again,
is
it's a little
subtle
gray area.
distinction there, but
Yeah, it's subtle enough, but okay, so we'll accept that motion, I believe is what we're hearing, and discussion on that motion. Director Sebring.
Again, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I don't think we can make any decision on this today. And frankly, I'm a little bit offended by the notion that that position makes me uncourageous. This is not about courage. This is about leadership in a time of crisis.
Thank you. Let's not try and make it a personal argument. I think everybody has their positions, but it's just gonna end up into a back and forth on courage or otherwise. I'm sorry, did I have anyone else on my speakers list to this deferral for 30 days motion? I'm seeing none. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Director Sebring, Ryan, oh, sorry, I'm going to call the opposed then. All those opposed? Sorry, Directors Morrison, Yanni DiNardo, Haim, Kuhn, and Acton opposed. Thank you. So, Ms. Legault,
Carries.
the motion carries. Thank you. So, Ms. Legault, we'll resume our agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item CR2 is the report and recommendations of the Community Services Committee meeting of March 11th, 2020.
Through to Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. CR2, Community Service Committee meeting of March 11th, 2020. The recommendation is as follows at number 1, that staff provide a report on agenda items C3 and C4 regarding the invitation to bid as host of the BC Summer and Winter Games. 2, 1, that the day pass on board program with a fare of $4.50 per day pass replace the use of transfers on Cowichan Valley Transit effective July 1st, 2020. And 2, that the family travel program as described in the staff report to the March 11th, 2020 Community Services Committee be implemented effective July 1, 2020. 3, that staff report on the resources required to develop a long-term plan for management and operation of publicly accessible EV charging stations, including the option to discontinue level 2 charges at the end of their life cycle. 4, that the CVRD be authorized to enter into a mutual aid agreement with the City of Duncan, District of North Cowichan, Town of Lake Cowichan, Cowichan Bay Improvement District, Mill Bay Fire Protection District, Shawnigan Improvement District, Thetis Island Improvement District, and the Town of Ladysmith to provide fire services during emergencies ending December 31st, 2024. And 5, that the 2020 budget for Function 205 Public Safety be amended to 1, increase transfer from operating reserves to $15,000, 2, increase 4070 emergency social services by $15,000 to fund a prorated emergency support services delivery contract through the Canadian Red Cross.
Are those items moved, Director Acton?
I move those items.
Seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any discussion on those? Director Sebring.
Just one point I heard on the radio coming here that the summer games this year have been canceled in Maple Ridge and that they've already been awarded 2024. And I think that bullet 1 here envisions perhaps 2024, so I just wanted to make staff aware of that.
Thank you. I think that's a referral to staff anyway, so I'm sure they'll follow up and report back that that is the case. Any further discussion on this package of resolutions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to staff reports. Item SR1 is a staff report from Community Planning regarding the Capital Regional District Regional Growth Strategy Bylaw 4328. And the recommendation is that the Capital Regional District be advised that as per Section 436(4) of the Local Government Act, the CVRD accepts CRD Bylaw 4328, cited as Capital Regional District Regional Growth Strategy Amendment Bylaw Number 1, 2019.
Thank you. Do I have a mover or seconder? Moved by Director Sebring, seconded by Director Haim. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item SR2 is a budget amendment for Ingram Street, and the recommendation proposed is that the budget for Function 200 Administration Office be amended by 1, increasing transfer from operating reserves by $45,000, and 2, increasing building improvements by $45,000.
Thank you. Do I have a mover? Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Morrison. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item SR3 is a staff report from Recycling and Waste Management Division. And the recommendation for consideration is that the Memorandum of Understanding with the Town of Lake Cowichan for a temporary fire training area at Mead Creek Recycling Center for a 5-year term be approved.
Thank you. Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Staples. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to bylaws. Item B1, CVRD bylaw number 4316, Honeymoon Bay Drainage System Service Establishment bylaw 2020 for adoption.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Item B2, CVRD bylaw 4321, Regional Board Procedures Amendment bylaw 2020 for first, second, and third reading.
Thank you. Moved by Director Nicholson. Question, Director Nicholson.
I guess I'd just like some clarification or some explanation of what this means in terms of public input. Does that change anything, or is this, could someone just walk through what this means?
I put that through to staff. I don't know who wants to field this one, but I think maybe what are the practical implications of how the board meetings would actually proceed under this bylaw? I guess it's more not necessarily directed to the bylaw, but operationally, how do we continue to allow for public input in electronic meetings?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are some logistics to work out, of course, as we experiment with our electronic meetings and with our agenda management system for options for the public to participate from home. In the absence of that, at this time, we are still required to have an open meeting, so we are still required by provincial legislation to allow members of the public to attend, although today we see that they've chosen not to. So we will be looking at our options and to be able to provide opportunities for the public to participate, whether that is via an email address or directly through a portal in our meeting management system. But we have some testing yet to do before we can make such an announcement.
So I think the answer is they're working out the technical details. And just so you know, I think many of us are doing it different ways, just trying to work with whatever works, and there will be some hiccups along the way, but I know, I'm not sure I can speak for North Cowichan, but in Ladysmith, we've got a combination of an email address and also they're working on the potential for opening it up at some point, but it seems technically awkward, so we'll work those details out. Follow-up?
So my other question is this just for these extraordinary times, or is it?
So I actually, I think there's a loophole, unintended consequences piece to this bylaw that I think has been well addressed by some of the inquiries that I've had. I will actually recommend that we have a motion after this to review the bylaw in more detail once this crisis ends. So I hope I would get support from the board for that. I think this is unusual times, extraordinary times. We're trying to do what we can to be as expedient with getting these bylaws passed so that we can resume that business unusual in a more safe setting electronically. But we definitely will have to discuss in more detail the finer points of the bylaw after this. Okay, so I think I have Director Morrison and then Director Sebring.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think my question might be for staff on this one. We seem to, I understand the rationale for the immediacy and the requirement for this in the times that we're facing right now, but I don't see any reference to availability of alternate directors to attend meetings. Now, I know that the intent is for us to not have everyone gathered when we have physical distancing matters to deal with and this contagion. But I guess, is that something that has been considered, or is that something that might be considered when our chair introduces the subsequent motion to this?
I'll answer a little bit of it, but I think that there are, as I just said, loopholes and unintended consequences there. And I think you just highlighted one of them, was that there's a role for an alternate director to play. Thank you, alternate directors who are here today. However, that can be usurped by this bylaw, by the director saying, oh, I'm going to participate electronically. So there are some loopholes here. I think that's recognized, but so I'm hoping that there'll be support for a resolution after that says when the state of BC emergency is rescinded, that the bylaw be brought back to the board, or maybe more appropriately, the Corporate Services Committee, to be looked at and refined in more detail, or possibly these changes to be rescinded, depending on the pleasure of the board at that time. I don't know if staff has anything to add to that. Nothing to add. Is there further discussion on this? Sorry, Director Sebring, I have you written on my piece of paper, but Director Sebring.
I just have a process question, just because I'm that guy. I noticed that B3, which is similar amendments for the committee and commissions, is up for adoption today, but the one we're dealing with right now is only first, second, and third. Are there different statutory requirements for those two bylaws?
Board bylaw requires public advertising, I believe, Director Legault, or sorry, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not a statutory requirement of the Local Government Act. However, there was a provision in the board procedures bylaw that had notice provisions for the board procedures bylaw amendment. So we're following the provisions of our own bylaw.
We couldn't just waive that by resolution, by unanimous resolution? and do
Unfortunately,
adoption
the
today?
only way to change a bylaw is through another bylaw amendment.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. We tried to make it as easy as possible. Unfortunately, we wrote it into our own bylaw. Is there any further discussion on this? I believe it's been moved and seconded. Looking for a nod from the side. Okay, I think. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Moving on, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item B3, CVRD Bylaw 4322, Committee and Commission Procedures Amendment Bylaw 2020 for first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Sebring. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. CVRD Bylaw 4322 for adoption.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Nicholson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault, moving on. I do not believe we have any public here for question period.
Correct. So a motion to close the meeting to the public under Section 90 of the Community Charter, 91C.
Thank you. Moved by Director Staples, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. All those in favor?